My name is Peggy Davis, and I'm 46 years old. I live in a small suburb just outside of Dallas, Texas, where people love to talk about family values until those values start costing them something. For me, that cost came the day my family decided my son's college graduation wasn't worth the drive. Ethan had done everything right: 4 years of classes, night shifts at the campus cafe, weekends spent tutoring other students. He graduated with honors, 3.8 GPA, and zero student debt because I'd worked overtime shifts as a nurse supervisor to help him. I wanted that day, just 2 hours in a folding chair under the Texas sun, to be a shared victory. But when I called to ask if my parents and sister were coming, my mom's voice was flat. "Oh, honey, it's just a piece of paper. We already did the whole cap and gown thing with Karen's little one." I remember staring at my phone, thinking I'd misheard. With Mara? She's 6. "Kindergarten graduation," Mom said brightly, as if that explained everything. "We're all going, balloons, cupcakes, photos, real milestones." Something in me went still. I didn't argue. I just said, "Okay," and hung up. I told myself not to take it personally. They'd always been like that. Karen, the perfect one, always center stage. Me? The reliable one, the fixer, the wallet. That weekend, Ethan stood on stage in his cap and gown, while I cheered until my throat hurt. There was no one else from our family in the crowd. I smiled for him, but the emptiness beside me stung harder than the sunburn I got that day. 3 days later, I was scrolling through Facebook when I almost spilled my coffee. There they were, my parents, my sister Karen, and her daughter Mara, all grinning in front of a backdrop of pink and gold balloons. The caption read, "So proud of our little graduate." There was a custom t-shirt with Mara's face printed across it. My dad held a glittery sign that said, "You did it," in bubble letters. They didn't even invite me. Not one text, not one mention. At first, I didn't feel angry, just hollow, like a room after everyone's left and the air hasn't caught up yet. But life, it seems, wasn't done proving how little I mattered to them. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was my dad. His voice was anxious. "Peggy, sweetheart, could you help us out? The car payment didn't go through, just a mix-up with the bank. You know how that goes." I froze. "What car payment?" "The SUV we bought a couple months ago. You remember, the one you helped with?" "I never helped with that," I said slowly. There was silence. Then he coughed. "Well, maybe your mother handled the paperwork. She said you were fine with it." Something inside me sank. Fine with what? That's when it clicked. The brand new silver SUV they'd bragged about buying, with good credit. Only now did I realize whose credit that was. After the call, I went digging. 2 years of working in healthcare had taught me to keep documents organized. I pulled out the manila folder I kept for my financial papers, and there it was. A welcome packet from the dealership, addressed to me. My hands trembled as I read it. Primary buyer, Peggy Davis. Co-signer, none. Monthly payment, $729. I felt sick. I hadn't even set foot in that dealership. I called my mom. She answered cheerfully, as if we were catching up about a TV show. "Oh, honey, don't worry about that. We just used your name for a quick approval. We'll make all the payments. It's temporary." "Mom, that's illegal." "It's family, Peggy. Don't be dramatic. You always overthink everything." She hung up before I could say another word. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the documents. Ethan walked in, still in his scrubs from his part-time job. "Mom, what's wrong?" I forced a smile. "Nothing you need to worry about." But inside, something was shifting. I'd spent years pretending that their favoritism didn't hurt, that being the dependable one was some kind of virtue. But now I was realizing dependable was just their polite word for usable. And for the first time in a long time, I started thinking about consequences. I called my bank to check my credit alerts. Then I saved copies of every document, every email, every screenshot of that dealership welcome packet. I wasn't ready to act yet, but I was done pretending. Because families can forgive mistakes, but this wasn't a mistake. It was theft with a smile. And the next time they called, it wouldn't be for forgiveness. It would be for answers. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were circling around that single line on the dealership paper. Primary buyer, Peggy Davis. It didn't even look like my signature. The slant was wrong. The letters uneven, like someone had tried to copy it from memory. By 8 a.m., I'd made 3 phone calls. To the dealership, to my bank, and to a lawyer a coworker once mentioned during a divorce case. Each call chipped away another layer of disbelief. The dealership clerk confirmed what I already suspected. Yes, ma'am, the documents were faxed in. We didn't see the customer in person. Faxed. My stomach turned. It wasn't just carelessness, it was deliberate. That afternoon, my father called again. This time his tone was softer, almost apologetic. Peggy, your mother's upset. She says you sounded angry yesterday. We didn't mean to upset you. You used my name, I said flatly. You forged my signature. There was a pause, then a sigh. Oh, honey, you're blowing this out of proportion. It's just paperwork. You know we'd never hurt you. I almost laughed. Never hurt me? They'd spent decades doing it, just never on paper before. I stared at the stack of documents on the counter. Dad, I need you to tell me the truth. Who signed these papers? He hesitated. Your mother handled it. Of course she did. That night, I went through every email and letter I'd ever ignored. There were hints everywhere, little details that made sense now. The pre-approval notice I'd assumed was spam. The credit alert I'd brushed off. They hadn't just used me once. They'd planned this. When Ethan came home, I tried to hide the tension, but he saw it instantly. Mom, you've been staring at those papers for hours. What's going on? I took a deep breath. Your grandparents used my credit to buy their car. They forged my name. He blinked, stunned. They what? I nodded, trying to stay composed. And now they've missed the first payment. His jaw tightened. You've helped them so much already. Why would they? Because they think I won't stop them, I said quietly. Because I never have. Ethan sat across from me, his voice low. Then maybe it's time you did. That line hit deeper than he knew. The next day, my sister Karen showed up at my door holding a tray of store-bought brownies. She always brought cheap desserts when she wanted something. Peggy, wow, you look tired. Everything okay? She asked, feigning concern. I'm fine, I said, though my tone could have cut glass. What brings you here? She smiled, twisting her keys. Well, actually, Mom told me you're upset about the car thing. You know, she feels terrible. It was just a mix-up, really. Forgery isn't a mix-up, Karen. Her smile faltered. Oh, come on. Don't make this ugly. Families help each other. I folded my arms. Funny, I don't remember you helping me with Ethan's tuition or Dad's medical bills last year. That wiped the fake warmth off her face. You've always been dramatic. You think you're better than us just because you work too much and save every penny. Maybe if you relaxed once in a while, you wouldn't be so bitter. I almost smiled. Bitter people don't bake brownies they didn't pay for. Her eyes narrowed. You know, Mom says you've changed. Maybe you should think about what you're doing before you break this family apart. And with that, she turned to leave, muttering under her breath, You'll regret this. When the door shut, I stood in the quiet kitchen, staring at the untouched brownies. Something inside me finally snapped, not loud, not explosive, quiet and final, like a lock turning. That night, I called the lawyer again. His name was Daniel Rice, and his voice was calm, efficient. He asked for copies of everything. The contract, the fax confirmation, the dealership documents. When I emailed them over, he called back within an hour. Peggy, you're right. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is fraud. You have a solid case. Even if it's my parents? Especially because it's your parents. The law doesn't care whose last name they share. I hung up, feeling something strange, relief mixed with heartbreak. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to protect them. I was protecting me. Before bed, I checked my phone. 22 missed calls from my mother. 7 from my father. 1 text from Karen. You're really going to do this to your own family? I didn't reply. Instead, I put my phone on silent, turned off the lights, and whispered to the dark. They did this to themselves. Outside, the night was heavy and still, the kind of silence that feels like it's holding its breath before the storm. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. I thought I'd already reached my breaking point. I was wrong. A week after calling my lawyer, I got another letter in the mail. Same bold blue logo on the envelope, but a different company this time, a furniture store I'd never stepped foot in. When I opened it, my stomach dropped. Welcome to your new account, Ms. Peggy Davis. Current balance, $8,472. At first, I actually laughed, a dry, shaky sound that didn't feel human. Then I read the itemized list, a 75-inch TV, 2 leather couches, a gaming console, 3 designer handbags, all delivered to my parents' address. I pressed my hands to my face and sat down. It wasn't just the money, it was the realization that there was no line they wouldn't cross. I had become an invisible ATM they could tap whenever their perfect lives needed a little polish. By the time Ethan came home, I had a folder open, filled with printouts, credit reports, and screenshots. He looked at me and froze. Mom, are you okay? I tried to smile, but it hurt. You remember when Grandma said family always takes care of family? Yeah. She didn't mean it like this. I turned the papers toward him. He scanned them, jaw tightening. They opened another account in your name? I nodded, without a word. He was quiet for a long time, then said softly, I can start paying you back for college. I know you said not to, but... Ethan, no! I shook my head. You don't owe me a cent. You earned that degree. He looked at me, eyes wet with frustration. Then why do they get to keep doing this to you? I didn't have an answer, just a deep, tired ache where trust used to be. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, and made a decision. I wanted to see how far they'd go, to hear, from their own mouths, just how normal they thought this was. The next morning, I called my mother. Mom, I said, keeping my voice light. Good news. I got a job offer. Comes with a signing bonus. I was thinking of using it to help Ethan buy a car. There was a pause, and then her tone brightened like a switch had flipped. Oh, that's perfect, sweetheart. Actually, your father and I could really use some help too. Just until tax season. The electric bill, the insurance, the car payment. She started rattling off numbers like a grocery list. Not one question about me or Ethan. Just what I could cover. I let her talk until she ran out of breath, then said, I'll think about it. You're such a blessing, she said. You've always been the responsible one. Responsible, that word again. The family's favorite synonym for gullible. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a while, my fingers tracing the rim of my coffee mug. Every part of me wanted to scream, but I didn't. I needed to stay calm, methodical. That afternoon, a new letter arrived, this time from the dealership. Notice of repossession. The SUV payment was officially delinquent. If the balance wasn't brought current within 5 days, the car would be repossessed. And since my name was on the contract, my credit would take the hit. It was a trap. Pay for their mess and protect my score, or let it tank and take them down with it. I picked up my phone and stared at the contact labeled Mom. For once, I didn't feel guilt, just a slow, simmering clarity. They didn't respect me enough to ask permission. They didn't even respect me enough to lie well. I opened my laptop, pulled up the fraud report portal, and started typing. The next morning, my lawyer called. Peggy, I've reviewed everything. This isn't just identity misuse. It's calculated fraud. We're filing formal claims and notifying the credit bureaus. His tone was steady, but I could hear the weight behind it. Are you ready for what comes after this? I hesitated, then nodded. More than ever. 2 days later, my phone lit up again. But this time, it wasn't my parents. It was the store's fraud department. Ms. Davis, we've investigated your report. One of our staff recognized your sister, Karen Davis, as the purchaser. We also have footage confirming she picked up the items. For a second, I couldn't breathe. You're certain? Completely. We'll cooperate fully if this escalates legally. After the call, I sat there at my kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork, coffee stains, and the hum of the refrigerator. For months, I'd felt trapped in a nightmare built by people who claimed to love me. Now, for the first time, I felt something else. Power. I texted my lawyer. They used my name again. I have proof. Let's move forward. He replied 1 minute later. Understood. It's time to make them face it. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just cleaned my kitchen, poured a glass of wine, and whispered to the empty room. They think I'm weak because I keep quiet. Let's see how loud silence can get. The next morning, I set my alarm for 6:30. It was time to pay a visit to the dealership and to stop being the family's invisible ATM once and for all. By the time I pulled into the dealership lot, the morning air was heavy with that dry Texas heat that sticks to your skin. I wasn't the trembling daughter who used to apologize for existing. Not anymore. My lawyer, Daniel Rice, was already waiting by the entrance. A calm man in a gray suit with the kind of presence that makes people listen before he even speaks. He greeted me with a nod. You ready, Peggy? I took a breath. Ready as I'll ever be. We walked in together. The receptionist looked up, smiling politely. Welcome back, Ms. Davis. Are you here to make a payment? Daniel's tone was crisp. No, we're here about the fraudulent loan under her name. The smile froze on her face. She led us to an office where a nervous finance manager waited, a man with thinning hair and a cheap tie who clearly didn't expect lawyers. Daniel laid the papers neatly across the desk, the contract, the fax logs, my credit report, even the dealership's welcome letter. These documents were submitted without Ms. Davis's authorization. The signature isn't hers. You have a major legal problem. The manager's Adam's apple bobbed. We thought everything was legitimate. Her mother said. Daniel cut him off. Her mother doesn't sign federal loan documents on her behalf. You accepted forged paperwork and facilitated identity fraud. Silence fell. The man's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the phone. Let me get my supervisor. 10 minutes later, the general manager entered, older, sharper, and much more careful with his words. Ms. Davis, we're deeply sorry. We'll cooperate fully. If you'd prefer, we can remove your name from the loan immediately and classify the account as fraudulent. I met his gaze evenly. And you'll report that to the credit bureaus today? He nodded quickly. Yes, we'll make this right. Daniel didn't smile. You'll also provide written confirmation. By noon. The manager agreed, his voice thin. I signed nothing, said nothing more. When we left, the heat outside felt lighter somehow, like I'd stepped out of a fog I'd been living in for years. But I wasn't done. I drove straight to my parents' house. Their street looked exactly the same as when I was a kid. Manicured lawns, neat driveways, the kind of neighborhood that looks wholesome from the outside. As I pulled up, I saw it all. The shiny silver SUV gleaming in the driveway, the same one under my name. Through the window, a massive TV glowed on the wall. Leather couches, new rugs, shopping bags stacked in the corner. My stomach twisted. Every item was a receipt of betrayal. I almost turned the car around. Almost. But then I saw a white envelope sitting on the front porch with my name scrawled in my mother's handwriting. I stepped out, picked it up, and tore it open right there. Inside were two papers, a legal transfer request and a credit application, both already filled out with my personal information. The letterhead belonged to a man named Tom Harlan, an attorney I'd never met, apparently their lawyer. I scanned the first document. They weren't just trying to stick me with the SUV, they were trying to transfer the entire loan permanently into my name, clearing themselves of every cent owed. Behind it, the application listed my full social security number, address, and even my digital signature, forged again. My chest tightened. The door opened. My sister Karen stood there, holding a brand new iPhone and sipping from a straw like nothing was wrong. Peggy, what are you doing here? I held up the papers. You want to explain this? She glanced at them and shrugged. Mom said it's just a technical thing. Don't freak out. Technical thing? You tried to legally dump the entire car loan into my name. And who's Tom Harlan? Karen's eyes darted. Mom's friend. He's helping us clean things up. You should be grateful, actually. He said he could make it easier on your credit. I stared at her, speechless. Behind her, I heard my mother's voice calling from the kitchen, cheerful as ever. Peggy, you came just in time. We're about to cut cake for Mara's dance recital party. Come in, sweetheart. I stepped inside, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see. The house looked like a showroom. New appliances, luxury bags on the counter, the giant TV flashing bright images. My dad was laughing with my mother like nothing was wrong. Look who finally decided to visit, he said with that same practiced smile. My mother waved a knife over the cake. Don't look so serious, dear. We just needed to tidy up some paperwork. Have some cake. On the table beside her was another envelope addressed to me. This one from the dealership, stamped urgent. I opened it. Inside was a copy of the credit transfer form, the same one in my mother's handwriting. They'd actually tried to file it already. I looked up at her, and for the first time, I saw her not as my mother, but as someone who had studied me well enough to weaponize my own kindness. I didn't say a word. I put the papers back into the envelope, turned around, and walked out. Karen called after me. Peggy, stop being so dramatic. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. I didn't stop. In the car, I sat gripping the steering wheel, my pulse pounding. I wasn't crying, not even close. My anger had gone cold, clear, and precise. They thought I'd cave again, that I'd fix everything quietly. But this time I wasn't their fixer. I was their reckoning. When I got home, I sent copies of every forged document to Daniel. He responded within minutes. We'll file the fraud report first thing tomorrow. Stay calm. Don't contact them again. I leaned back, staring at my ceiling. For the first time, I wasn't scared. I wasn't the desperate daughter begging for respect. I was a woman reclaiming her name, literally. And the next time my parents heard Peggy Davis, it wouldn't be as their daughter. It would be as their plaintiff. The following morning felt different. The kind of quiet before a thunderstorm. Except this time, I was the one holding the lightning. At 9 o'clock sharp, I met Daniel at his office. He'd already filed the fraud reports with the dealership, the credit bureaus, and the police. The mountain of paperwork on his desk looked like a war plan, because it was. He looked up from his laptop. Peggy, once these letters go out, there's no going back. They'll be notified immediately. I'm not backing down, I said. Not this time. He nodded approvingly. Then let's make it official. By noon, 3 certified envelopes were on their way, one to the dealership, one to the store's fraud department, and one to Tom Harlan, my parents' so-called lawyer. Each letter demanded immediate removal of my name and restitution for damages within 10 business days, or we'd proceed with civil and criminal charges. I left the office lighter until my phone started buzzing nonstop. Mom, Dad, Karen. I didn't answer, but when I got home, the pounding started on my front door. I peered through the peephole. My mother stood there, hair disheveled, face red, eyes wild. Peggy, open this door right now. I didn't. I leaned against the wall and listened as she banged again. You're destroying this family. Do you know what people will say? Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. You're making us sick over a car. Then her voice softened into that syrupy tone I'd fallen for all my life. Sweetheart, we can fix this. Just withdraw the complaint. We'll make it right. I almost laughed. They'd said the same thing every time they crossed a line. We'll make it right. Translation. You'll make it disappear. The knocking stopped, and minutes later my phone lit up again. A voicemail from my father. Peggy, listen, we all make mistakes. Don't turn this into something ugly. You'll regret it. I deleted it without listening to the end. Then came the text from Karen. Wow, suing your own parents? Classy move. Don't expect anyone to side with you when this blows up. I didn't respond, but my hands were shaking. Not from fear this time, but adrenaline. That night, as I was cleaning up dinner, my phone rang again. Unknown number. When I answered, I heard a small voice on the other end. Aunt Peggy? It was Mara, my 6-year-old niece. Mommy's crying, she said softly. She said you're trying to take our car away. Did we do something bad? The words pierced deeper than any insult. I felt the burn of tears I didn't want to shed. No, sweetheart, I said gently. You didn't do anything wrong. The adults just made some mistakes. When she hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the dark window. They were using a child now, their own daughter, to guilt me. That was it. No more silence. 3 days later, Daniel called with an update. Peggy, the furniture store reached out. They've confirmed the purchases were made by your sister. There's security footage of her signing for delivery. They're offering to settle quietly. Quietly? I repeated. They tried to steal almost $9,000 in my name. Exactly. Which means we can add punitive damages. I exhaled slowly. Then let's add them. 2 weeks later, the lawsuit was filed. Davis versus Davis et al. Seeing my name as the plaintiff on official court documents didn't feel satisfying. It felt surreal. The hearing stretched for months. My parents' lawyer tried every trick in the book. Delays, denials, emotional appeals. My sister claimed I'd verbally approved everything, though no such proof existed. But Daniel was meticulous. He presented the forged contracts, the fax timestamps, the store receipts, and finally, the surveillance footage of Karen signing for the leather couches. Still, the courtroom moment that broke me came when Ethan took the stand. He stood there, tall and calm, wearing his best suit, and said, My mother has spent her whole life cleaning up their messes. I heard my grandmother and aunt laughing once about how they'd use Mom's good credit while they still could. I didn't think much of it then. Now I do. My mother's face drained of color. Karen stared at her lap. My father shifted uncomfortably. I didn't look at any of them. When the judge finally spoke, her words felt like exhale after a long-held breath. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Peggy Davis. Restitution was ordered. Car payments, store purchases, recovery fees, plus damages, totaling over $48,000. My father stormed out before the ruling finished. Karen followed, muttering something about betrayal. My mother lingered for a moment, eyes glistening with something I couldn't read. Shame, anger, maybe disbelief that I'd actually stood up to her. Then she left too. When the courtroom doors closed behind them, Daniel turned to me. You did it. I nodded slowly. No, I said. I just stopped pretending. That night, I went home, sat in silence, and let myself breathe. For once, there were no calls, no demands, no guilt, just quiet. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. And for the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. 8 months have passed since the court ruling. Sometimes I wake up before dawn and just listen to the silence. No vibrating phone, no guilt-tipped messages, no one demanding I fix what they broke. The peace feels almost unreal, like my life is still catching up to the quiet I fought for. My parents haven't called, my sister hasn't texted, not even a birthday card slipped into the mail out of obligation. And you know what? I'm fine with that. For years, I thought silence meant exile. Now I understand it's space, the kind I needed to rebuild. The first restitution payments arrived slowly. Garnished wages, mailed checks, settlement transfers. After fees and legal costs, I was left with about $23,000. I didn't spend it right away. I just let it sit, untouched, like proof that my name finally meant something mine. One Friday evening, Ethan came home from work with his usual energy. "Guess what, Mom? I got the promotion." I smiled. "You deserve it." He laughed, dropping onto the couch. "And before you ask, no, I don't need a new car. Mine's fine." That made me laugh too. "Actually," I said, "I've been thinking. You've earned one. Not brand new, just something solid, something that's yours." His eyebrows lifted. "You serious?" I nodded. "Cash, clean title, no loans, no co-signers. Just your name." Over the next 2 weeks, we visited dealerships. Not the flashy kind, just quiet lots, with honest mechanics and too much sun glare. When he finally found a reliable used hybrid, he looked at me like a kid on Christmas morning. When I handed over the cashier's check, the salesman slid 2 copies of the title across the counter. "Whose name should go here?" I smiled. "His." Ethan hesitated, pen in hand. "You sure?" "Positive." Watching him sign his own name, his first title, his own car, it felt like more than a transaction. It felt like breaking a cycle. That night, as he drove us home, music playing softly, I looked out at the dark highway and realized something simple. This was the first time in years I'd been in a car completely mine to trust. No hidden loans, no forged signatures, just peace. When we got home, Ethan parked in the driveway and turned to me. "Mom, I think Grandpa and Grandma lost the best version of you." I smiled faintly. Maybe they never wanted her. Maybe they preferred the one who stayed quiet. He reached over and squeezed my hand. Well, they don't get her back. We sat there a while, not talking, just breathing. In the weeks that followed, life settled into something beautifully uneventful. I went back to my morning walks, therapy sessions, cooking on Sundays. Daniel called once to tell me the final settlements had cleared. "Congratulations, Peggy. Case closed," he said. I laughed softly. "It's funny. I thought closure would feel loud." "It never does," he replied. "Real peace is quiet." He was right. One evening, I received a letter without a return address. My stomach clenched as I opened it. Inside, just 2 lines written in my mother's handwriting. "You've changed. I hope you're happy." I stared at the paper for a moment. Then I folded it neatly, walked to the kitchen, and dropped it into the trash. "Yes," I whispered to the empty room, "I am." That weekend, Ethan invited his friends over for dinner. Laughter filled the house. Real laughter, not the forced politeness of family gatherings. Music played, dishes clattered, and the air smelled like garlic and butter. At one point, I stepped outside to the porch. The night air was cool, and for the first time, I realized I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of them, the fantasy of a family that had never truly existed. And that realization wasn't bitter. It was freeing. I used to believe peace was something other people could give me. If they just apologized, if they finally saw my worth, if they changed. But peace doesn't work that way. It's not inherited, it's earned. It's the sound of your own door locking behind you without fear. It's your name clean on a credit report. It's the calm of knowing no one owns a piece of you anymore. If they ever reach out again, and maybe one day they will, they won't find the old Peggy Davis, the one who said yes to everything just to be loved. They'll find the woman who learned that love without respect is just manipulation with manners. They'll find someone who finally chose herself, and she's not going back.